Hey guys, before we get into the video today, I want to announce our Black Friday Cyber Monday sale, which will be running through the end of the weekend. Click on the link in the description and you can get 35% off for life on subscriptions at the premium and basic plan over at CrushLivePoker.com. Let's move along here to this guy. One of my favorite callers here, who's got an interesting hand. ZZZYX, you're up next. Thanks for being patient, sir.
This is at the win. The 2-5 1500 buy-in at the win.
Okay. All right. Give me a Euro report in that game.
Not that over the top.
No?
Not at all.
No. Do they tend to gravitate to the uncapped game that I know goes on there at the win?
Most likely, because the 5-10's uncapped.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 2-5 1500 cap at the win. Okay.
Now, the key thing is I'm a reg at another 3-5 1500 in town. I haven't played this game since before the pandemic. I knew no one at the table. And believe it or not, this was my first hand on sitting down.
Because you usually play at South Point or something, right?
I normally play at South Point, the 3-5, and then I used to be a reg at the 2-5 at Red Rock.
So you are a Vegas reg. You are the definition of a Vegas reg.
Yes.
Okay.
An older one, but a Vegas reg.
Okay. All right. So 2-5 1500 cap. Yep.
Okay, so it's 9-handed, and I just bought in for 1,000.
Okay.
And the two villains in his hand, the cutoff and the under the gun, have me covered.
Okay.
So under the gun straddles for 10.
Okay.
I'm in low jack, my very first hand. I looked down at ace of hearts, ace of spades.
Okay, so hero in low jack, ace of hearts, ace of spades. Okay.
So I raised to 35.
Okay.
The cutoff calls and the straddle calls.
Cutoff and straddle call. So pot's probably like 110, 115, something like that.
112. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna put 110. Okay.
Okay, so the flop comes deuce of spades, 5 of spades, 7 of spades.
Okay.
I have pocket aces with the ace of spades.
Yep.
So I bet 65.
So it gets checked to you, right? Straddle checks.
The straddle checks to me, yes.
Okay, hero bet 65. Now, there's nothing wrong with betting here. I will say, I just want to say something off the top here on these monotone boards. This is one of the things in the third part of the podcast tomorrow that I'll cover, although I'm probably most of this little podcast series I've been doing the last 2 weeks has to do with c-bet bluffing on different textures. Sometimes on monotone boards, when you hold aces with the suit, you can check, especially on raggedy boards, for a number of different reasons, in the sense that, you know, the whole definition of a sort of a slow play is the fact that you allow people to catch up to other hands. Also, you have a lot of give ups on these boards, on these monotone boards, where you're not c-betting like, you know, a red ace king. So it kind of gives some opponents the green light to bluff. So you could actually play this hand somewhat sort of cagey and defensively sometimes, specifically holding aces on a monotone board. I don't think there's anything wrong with betting at 2-5. It's just something of note. Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
So the bet of 65 is pretty, okay, normal. What got crazy is the cutoff then raises to 300.
And of course, you protect yourself against, I mean, obviously you can call across raises when betting. Also, too, I might like a slightly smaller sizing of something like 40 or something like that. That's a little bit subtle, but what ends up happening is that if you do end up getting raised on boards like this, raises represent flop, flushes, and sets, and then you're not doing great against those types of hands. So cutoff raises to 300, okay?
And then the straddle goes all in for 1,000 effective.
Goes all in for 1,000.
Yeah.
All right.
In other words, he shoved, and it was 1,000 effective to me.
Now, just as something of subtle note, you said that they both covered you. Did they both have 1,500? So the straddle's actually shoving for 15, so the cutoff has to call, another 12 or so. Do you remember? Because that will make a difference.
They both had 1,500, yeah.
Okay. Because, I mean, just thinking about, like, whether the cutoff automatically calls, right? You know what I'm saying? So hero bet 65, cutoff raises to 300, straddle goes all in for 1,000. ZZ, YX, do you agree that at least one person here has flopped a flush, usually, given this action?
That's where it gets so interesting, because I would say when this happened, I figured, okay, the cutoff, I was thinking the cutoff would have, since he didn't raise my bet at pre, I put him on, and then he raises my bet on the flop. I thought he'd have a low set,
Okay.
or a spades, a set
Right.
of sevens, set of fives, or a spades.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the straddle goes all in, I figured, what can he do that with except spades? Because I have the obvious bluff, because I'm holding the stiff ace of spades.
Let me rephrase my question. Do you agree that at least one of these guys has at least a set?
Yes.
At least a set. Okay. We'll get that out of the way right away here. The reason why I say that is because you make a good point that you have the ace of spades. Sometimes people will bluff with that, which, I mean, I would tend to think that this is either at a minimum 2 flop flushes or a set and a flush. I guess once in a great while, like 1 out of 20 times, you could be looking at 2 sets, or maybe like 7-5 and a flop flush, which is like top 2. But I mean, you sort of put yourself in the straddle spot. Now, we don't know these guys, but if you flop a set of 5s or 7s here and you're in the straddle closing the action, and then you check it over to you bet, and then the cutoff raises, and you're 1,500 deep with the guy who raises, what do you think? What would your play be, Mr. ZZYX, in the straddle if you had a set of 5s or a set of 7s, and you faced this action, 1,500 effective with the cutoff?
If I was in the straddle in his position, I would
With a set.
Just call.
Yeah. I think that's very reasonable. That's what I would do too. Now, obviously, the guy could not be a reasonable player, but I think sets are mostly called here in this spot if you're in the straddle, right? Facing this action where it goes bet raise. So there's that. Now, if you are up against a flopped flush here, right? So now, instead of having 9 outs, right, you only have 7 outs if you're against a flop flush. We can do it really sort of dirty. You've got some full house redraw outs. You probably have somewhere around 30% equity against a flopped flush with aces, with the ace of spades, maybe a little bit less than that. And so you get into this sort of scenario where, and I think this is where we're going with it, where if you always think that the cutoff is going to call the shove, then it's like now, well, you're really calling, even though it's a little bit less than 1,000, you're calling like 1,000, and you're getting sort of 2 to 1 on your money, right? Like you're calling 1,000 to win, 2,300 in change, right? You're getting about 2.3 to 1 on your money. That's if the cutoff, say for example, the cutoff called out a turn. Let's say that you bet 65, the cutoff went to 300, this guy jammed, and now all of a sudden the cutoff called out of turn, where his action is binding, like he has to call. Now you're in this situation where it's like, well, I'm getting like 2.3 to 1 on my money. I ranged one guy with a set and one guy with a flop flush. You probably still don't quite have the equity, because I imagine when you stick the sets in there too, that the fact that one of the guys has a set means that, obviously if the board pairs and the spade comes, you still lose. So the guy with the set's probably going to have like, 25, 30% equity. The other guy's going to have probably something like 50 to 60%. I'm just doing this on the fly, and you have like 10 to 15. Someone can help me out if they have Poker Cruncher on the side, set versus aces and the ace of spades, but it's probably not that much. Maybe you've got 20% equity. So there's that, but also you don't even know if the cutoff is going to really call here. So you're not getting great pot odds, and this really does suggest to me that the straddle has a flush. Now, let's say the straddle had a set and the other guy folded. What are your odds? Sometimes this is more of a PLO type of thing. People sometimes will overdo this. Like, so say the straddle has a set. How many outs do you have? Well, now you've got 9 outs, and then you've got sort of 2 outs with your aces, but some of the full houses are dead, sort of outs. You might have 35 to 40% equity, but you're really not getting, you're getting over 2 to 1. Excuse me, I had said that you were getting 2 to, is it? you're getting, so the pot would be what, like, I mean, it's such a, so it'd be like maybe 1,400, 900 for you to call. So you're not quite getting the 2-1. I think kind of in
No,
either,
I'm not getting to it.
yeah, I think kind of in either scenario, kind of like a fold. I haven't looked at the live chat here, but I think I kind of fold here, man. So versus two, Graham Wheelock says versus two flushes, Hero has 25%. How can that be? Against two flushes? Two flushes would be, he'd have 5 out. Against 2 sets, he has 37%. Sure. Yeah, I get that. I get that he's got 37% against 2 sets. I wonder if 2 sets plays. I think it's more likely to be a set and a flush, or he's just up against a flop flush and maybe the cutoff just folds, something like that. I don't think he's got the equity here to call in either scenario, whether the cutoff calls behind or whether it's just heads up. Obviously, if it's heads up, it's much worse, right? So I think actually in either scenario, obviously, if the cutoff called out of turn, you'd be getting a better price and it would be much closer, getting right around 2.5 to 1, something like that. But I think I fold here in either scenario. Yeah, we're only getting the equity of both sets. Yeah, I agree. So what ended up, what were you thinking here?
I simplified it to I don't think there's enough spades left for me to call, and I did fold.
You did fold.
And this is where you won't believe it.
Okay.
Like I said, I thought I had the only bluff with the naked ace. Cutoff calls.
Yep.
The turn comes to 10 of spades.
Okay.
The straddle shows a naked king of spades.
Like king something of crap.
King 10 off with the king of spades.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy.
And then the cutoff, who was the original raiser, shows pocket jacks for an overpayer without a spade.
God, wow.
And I just thought this is going to ruin the reputation of this 2-5 game at the Wynn. Jesus.
Well, I mean, it's going to be great for the reputation of how good the game is. I mean, if those people are that far out to lunch, I mean, I was trying to look at this hand reasonably, then, I mean, maybe one of the things that we didn't take into account for is that these guys might thought that they were going to push you around or something, that you were some OMC type nit that's just going to fold everything except for a flush. But that is, that's pretty wild stuff. I mean, the games are alive, obviously, but I don't fault you really. I mean, here's the thing. Like I said, I take a step back, is that maybe you, Mr. ZYX, in these spots where it's close, you, as opposed to like me at the table, should find more calls in these spots, because perhaps people have a higher bluffing frequency against you, just as they're sort of taking a step back and they're looking at you as like an older guy. I mean, that's what I would kind of take away from this. If it's close, maybe you should do more calling.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I really like what you said about checking the flop when you've got a monotone with the ace of that set of that.
Yeah. On low connected type of boards, you know, and this one's a little bit, I mean, this is not quite as like 5-6-8 or 5-6-7 all spades or something like that. But on raggedy boards, when you hold aces with the suit and you're not going to get a ton of action from sort of high flushing types of hands, although I will say people will VPIP, you know, offsuit broadways, and you might get that call with the king or the queen. So betting can't be that bad, but you can sometimes check these spots, and it's a function of sometimes these are the boards that people will actually go after, because you're going to have so many check give ups in certain situations. But I appreciate the call.
Thanks so much, Bart.
All right, thank you very much.